to Parenting Kids with Complex Needs, a podcast for families navigating the unique challenges of raising children with medical, neurological, and developmental needs. I'm Carolyn, a mom who's been on this journey for over a decade raising my own amazing complex kid. I know firsthand how overwhelming it can be to juggle doctor's appointments, therapies, school accommodations, and everything else life throws your way, while still trying to take care of yourself. This podcast is your safe space to find guidance, resources, and encouragement. Whether your child has ADHD, sensory processing challenges, autism, or a medical diagnosis, you're in the right place. We'll dive into topics like advocating for your child's education, managing the financial stress of medical care, supporting their emotional well-being, and most importantly, taking care of you so that you can take care of them. I'll also bring on guest experts and share practical tools to make this journey a little easier. So grab your cup of coffee or reheat it for the third time, and let's navigate this together. You are not alone, and together we can make progress one step at a time. Let's get started. Hi, friend. Welcome to Parenting Kids with Complex Needs. I'm your host, Carolyn Gardner. I am an educator and advocate for kids with complex needs, and most importantly, a mom of a very amazing boy who has some complex needs. I wanted to take our first episode together to just kind of tell you about how this podcast came to be, what you can expect from being here. Okay, so before I do that, though, I wanted to let you know what I mean by complex needs. So complex kids or complex needs refers to kids that have multiple things going on simultaneously, like medical, developmental, educational, kind of all happening at the same time. So they're challenges that are not typical parenting challenges, all right? And then complex also refers to just your parenting approach, right? You don't have the typical things that every parent has if you are then having to navigate medical systems, educational accommodations, therapies, all those things, okay? So that's what we mean by complex. We're talking about your child and their needs as well as your process for raising your child, okay? So if that describes you and your family, you're in the right place. You're also in the right place if you are a professional that supports complex kids, or just, somebody that loves a complex kid. We welcome everybody here who wants to learn and be encouraged and supported. Okay, so we'll just start with a little bit about our story. Our journey started when my son was about 10 months old. He was diagnosed with a couple of complex brain conditions, which I'll get into on other episodes. But it was really a crash course for me in navigating a very, very complicated medical system. And then, this is where the complex part comes in. So we had our medical issues, but then as he got older, I started notice more sensory related things because his needs were more neurological in nature. And then as time went by, we also saw some learning challenges happening. When you are a parent or a caregiver of a complex child, your life becomes pretty overwhelmed, searching for answers, juggling all these endless appointments, and supporting your child emotionally, all while trying not to lose yourself in the process. So that's really why I'm so passionate about this podcast. I want you to think of it as your hub, okay? A place where you can find guidance, resources, and encouragement. Whether your child has medical needs, neurodiversity like ADHD or autism, learning challenges, or a mix of everything, this podcast is going to be for you. Together, we're going to conquer all the big topics like medical needs, especially if, the medical needs of your child is related to neurodiversity, we're going to be talking about that. We'll be addressing a lot around the topic of school, school avoidance, school anxiety, school refusal, topics like that, which is an area I'm particularly passionate about as a teacher. Financial challenges. A lot of people don't realize, unless you're in a community like this with like-minded people, the financial strain that can go along with having a complex child. So we're going to look at a lot of aspects of that, from, where to go for financial assistance, financial planning, things that you can do to alleviate that stress. We're going to be looking into those kinds of topics. Emotional well-being will be huge. Definitely want to talk about that. I've dug in super deep on this topic. Like I said before, I had a podcast a few years ago that was simply related to this and kids in school. So since the pandemic, I think we've seen our kids' anxiety raise a lot, but this particular group of kids does have a lot of anxiety and a lot of other emotional struggles, and we're going to get into that. But lastly, we're also going to spend a lot of time on, and I'm not crazy about this word, but self-care. And what I mean by that is taking care of you, self-compassion, taking care of yourself physically, your well-being, emotionally, all those things, because it is so hard when you have a child who is struggling and is physically sick or emotionally struggling in any way, for us to prioritize ourselves as parents, right? And where it might be hard for every parent, and if you're parenting a complex child, it becomes even more challenging with your schedule being erratic and so many things going on, to really be able to find those ways to give time for yourself. So I want us to devote time to that as well. Okay, how does that sound? How does it sound to be in a space where somebody really understands what you're going through, is going to give you some actionable steps that you can put into place? It's going to give you encouragement. I'm very excited to be here, and I hope you're excited to be here as well. So let's just dive in and get started. I want to tell you a little bit more about our story. And as I do that, I want to explain that, this is a journey. When you have a complex child, it's not like there's an end to one specific struggle. It's complex, it's chronic in most cases. So what happens is the journey changes. So I'm not here, to tell you that, we have conquered everything and I have all the answers. That's not what this is about. At different times, I probably went through things that maybe you're going through now, and maybe you've been through things that I haven't been through yet. But what we're creating here is a community so that we can help one another. I can certainly give you strategies about things that I have learned. I am always learning, but what I'm promising here in terms of being a hub is that if I don't have the answers, I'm going to go and find people that do, because that is one of the reasons that I created this podcast, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more in a minute. But let me just tell you a little bit about our story. So when my son was about 10 months old, he had an MRI because his head circumference was a little too big. And as a result, we found out that he had two conditions that I really had never heard of before, hydrocephalus and Chiari malformation. So basically what those two things are, the hydrocephalus is cerebral spinal fluid gets trapped in the ventricles of the brain rather than circulating the way that it's supposed to, which is what will cause the larger head. And then Chiari malformation is when the base of the brain, the tonsils, which I didn't know we had tonsils in our brain, but we do, at the very bottom of your brain, extend into the base of his skull, which creates a compression. So I found this out New Year's Eve when he was 10 months old, and suddenly our world was turned upside down, right? We didn't know what was going to happen next. People were saying all kinds of terms to me that I didn't understand. I had to decide between two pretty serious, scary surgeries for him. And so he did have surgery when he was 11 months old, and then a repair on that surgery when he was 20 months old for a shunt. That's adaptive equipment in his brain to help that flow of that fluid. But, or in some cases, your child, we hope that they don't have surgeries when they're little, but even if they do, that's usually where it ends, right? But it really wasn't the end for us, because as a result, he needed a lot of therapies. He was delayed with, some of his physical developmental things. He didn't walk until he was later in age than a lot of the kids. And then there were just like the endless appointments, all kinds of appointments, right? And then as he grew older, I started noticing some other things like sensory sensitivities and some challenges learning, which was kind of compounded by, the lockdown that we had from the pandemic kind of delayed us finding some things. And he was still little, so developmentally, there were some complications there that I'll get into on other podcast episodes. But basically, it wasn't just one thing, right? There were layers upon layers of things. And with each new diagnosis, there had to be more research, right? Different kinds of support. So I learned pretty quickly that in addition to his mom, I really had to be his advocate in all these arenas, medically, educationally, all the things, right? Also to be his biggest cheerleader. And it can be hard sometimes when you see your child struggling, and just learning myself where I had to have my mindset to be positive for him. And then in other times, I had even take on the role of a case manager for him, where, it was advocating for whatever it was that he needed. So you wear a lot of hats, right? But here's the thing. Because with each new diagnosis, there's new things to learn. We have to be aware of them. There's a lot of research to do. We have to be able to represent our kids in every arena. And it can just be very, very overwhelming when you're trying to navigate all the medical, educational, emotional challenges without a roadmap. It just can feel hopeless sometimes, right? So this is the thing. It's incredibly exhausting and frustrating, but it honestly doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense that every parent that goes on this journey has to feel like they're reinventing the wheel, trying to find the things that they need to find out in order to advocate their child appropriately. Everybody shouldn't have to be starting over. So the reason that I really created this podcast was to create a platform, create a hub where we can all come together, bring our information into one place so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. My goal is to create a resource that I wish I had back at the beginning, and that we all really need moving forward. A community of support with a group of people that really understand what we're going through, to provide practical advice, encouragement, and even a little bit of inspiration. So if you're a parent of a complex child and you have, concerns about education, and you're staying up into the wee hours of the morning, and then maybe going into a Facebook support group asking questions, we shouldn't all have to do that all the time. There should be some sort of things that we know, right? Or at least be able to access them more quickly. So that's what we're going to do here. It's going to take time to build, but we're going to combine our resources, and we're going to create a place where parents of complex kids can come and find out what they need to know more quickly and more efficiently, and have people supporting them to let them know how, things helped them. I think as parents, we just have to find each other and learn how to support each other. I know it's a big goal and it's ambitious. And I also want to just say, doing any of those things, researching, going into Facebook support groups, those are not wrong things. It's just that it seems to me that everybody's starting from scratch, right? And we shouldn't have to do that. There needs to be some sort of a central point person. And I guess that would be my question to you as well. Do you have a central point person that is helping you coordinate everything? Do you have that person? Because that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm envisioning in this space. Not that I am that person, but that this space fills that gap. Okay. So I was a teacher for a very long time. I will always consider myself a teacher and an educator. So that's how my mind works. So one of the things that I know about teaching is that it's super important to create visuals to help make something more concrete. So I turned the mission of this podcast into a framework that's an acronym, and it spells CARE. So I just want to wrap up by kind of going through that with you, okay? So if we're spelling CARE, C stands for community, okay? Nobody should have to do this by themselves. We'll talk about finding support networks, building relationships with other families, and even connecting with educators and service providers who really get it and are ready to help you. Then A stands for, we've talked about it a lot, advocacy. So this is such a huge part of our lives, right? From IEP meetings at school to doctor's appointments, you are your child's biggest advocate, and it can be very overwhelming. So we're going to be covering strategies for communicating effectively when you're standing up for your child's needs, feeling more confident about that, which again, I think a lot of the confidence comes from knowing the information well, right? Feeling confident about what you know about what to talk to them about. And then also with advocacy, helping our kids advocate for themselves as well, because we can't always be there with them. So we'll be talking about that also. For R stands for resources. I mean, there's so much information out there, but finding what works for your family can feel like finding a needle in a haystack sometimes. And then, with all the parenting information, when you have neurotypical kids, you're going to go through different processes with them, different everything with them, really. So if you're starting there and not realizing you're starting there and it's not working, and then you're finding the things you need, which was my experience, it kind of took me a while to realize that there were just things that weren't working because they just wouldn't work for us, right? So I'm going to be bringing you tips and tools that I have created, that I will create, but also directing you to other people that can help you, because this really is about building a team, building a village, building, connections with, yes, really the village that's going to help you and your child. The last letter of our acronym is E, and E is for empowerment. So at the end of the day, I want you to feel confident and supported in this journey. And that means focusing on you and your mental health, your emotional resilience, and self-care. We're going to spend a lot of time, talking about getting you equipped with the information you need so you feel empowered to advocate, but also just feel empowered and healthy, right? And I'm not sugarcoating anything. I know it's incredibly difficult to prioritize yourself when you have a child with complex needs, but we're going to get into it here, okay? Because when we really aren't able to do that, we can't show up the way we need to. So it's a matter of being intentional. It's not easy, but we're going to work through that together as well. So E is for empowerment, and that is our CARE acronym, our CARE framework. One of the other things that I'm super aware of is that we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be diligent about keeping these episodes short, 15 to 20 minutes tops. and I'm getting close to that now. So I'm going to wrap up with just a couple of things. Let you know that next week we're going to be diving into the medical side of things, the neurological side of things, and spending time with sensory processing disorder. Now, you may or may not have a diagnosis for your child with sensory processing disorder, but if there's an issue for you of your child having sensory challenges, this is going to be an episode that you're not going to want to miss. Depending on your feedback, we might have to stay here for a while with this topic because I know it's something that affects so much of all of us on a daily basis. And sometimes the first thing that makes an issue for your child noticeable, what you notice that's going on with them from a sensory perspective. So looking forward to sharing that with you next week. I'm going to just leave you with this because we always need to be reminded you are not alone in this journey, okay? You are not alone. Parenting a child with complex needs is challenging in ways that only those walking a similar path can really, truly understand. But it's also filled with moments of love and growth and strength that remind us why we keep pushing forward. This podcast is here to remind you that there's a community of people cheering you on, offering you support, and sharing resources to help lighten your load. Together, we're creating a safe space where you can find the help you need when you need it. Last thing today is I want to give you some choices about how you can start connecting with this community and start using some actionable strategies with your child right now. And I encourage you to do at least one of these two things. First, join me and parents like you and me in our free online support group. It's a welcoming space where you can share your story, ask questions, and find encouragement from people who truly get it. And we're at in Facebook, Parents of ND Kids, ND for neurodiverse, or you can look in the show notes for that link and go to Facebook groups, Parents of ND Kids. Also, I want you to grab the free gift that I have for you here. It's called 5 Essential Strategies for Supporting Your Neurodiverse Child at Home. Inside the guide, you'll learn ways to support your child with strategies and things that you can do today. You can find, again, the link in the show notes or by going to carolyngardnerconsulting.com/parent guide. That's carolyngardnerconsulting.com/parent guide. So I encourage you to take the action step of doing one of those things right now for yourself. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I can't wait to walk alongside you on this journey and explore the ways we can really empower our kids and ourselves together. If you're excited about being a part of this community and you enjoyed the episode, I'd really love for you to subscribe and leave a review. If you give feedback, it really helps me reach other parents and caregivers who are searching for this kind of support. So I'd really appreciate if you would do that. Okay, until next time, take care of yourself and remember, you are not alone in this journey, and we'll get through it together.